Despite being one of Jane Austen's shortest stories, for me, it was the most gripping and I was the most invested on how this book was going to end. Hello friends and welcome to my channel. My name is Haley and I am a Christian wife, homeschooling mother of 3, out to redeem my very own literary education. And in order to do so, I'm reading mostly just classic literature. And you can't talk about classic literature without speaking about Jane Austen herself. And for Jane Austen July, a very wonderful annual tradition that this is my 2nd year participating in, I have finally read Lady Susan by Jane Austen. I read this story for the prompt to read one of Jane Austen's works that aren't her main 6 novels. I read all of those last year when Jane Austen was my female author of the year, but I did not make it to her novella, her epistolary novella, Lady Susan, or some of her other works. And I've been saving this for Jane Austen July. I have heard so many people tell me that Lady Susan is going to make me laugh out loud, and this story did not disappoint. It also made me incredibly anxious that Lady Susan was going to ruin the lives of everyone around her. So I was gripped. But this is Jane Austen's, I say novella, I don't really know what you would call it, because the story itself is less than 100 pages, or at least it is in this particular Everyman's Library edition I have of Jane Austen, Sanditon, and other stories. So this has Lady Susan, Sanditon, the Watsons, some of her notes and juvenilia and prayers, and just a lot of different Jane Austen things. And Lady Susan was within this particular collection, and it was less than 100 pages. And the story is an epistolary story, so it's told within a series of 41 letters written by the different characters at play, and she also has a conclusion drawn up at the end so that you can see how the story ends. And I was gripped. I read this in less than 2 days, which for a story that's less than 100 pages may not sound like a big feat. However, I do have 3 small children, a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So if I'm reading a story within 2 days, it's great. And this was great. So in Lady Susan, we of course follow Lady Susan Vernon, who is a widow whose husband has passed away. However, she is the most accomplished coquette in all of England. So she is a flirt. She is a terrible, terrible character. However, on the surface, when you meet her face to face, she just seems so sweet and innocent, but is inwardly very manipulative and conniving and plays games with people and preys upon the weak hearts of men. It's just really detestable. So to have a main character, the title, heroine, or anti-heroine, I should say, be kind of a villainous character was just really interesting, because what makes so many of Jane Austen's stories so great is the anti-heroines, the villains of the story. And so Lady Susan is a particularly interesting character that you love to hate. And so Lady Susan writes to her brother-in-law, Mr. Vernon, because she is basically kicked out of a home for meddling in a marriage very inappropriately, and she needs to find somewhere else to stay. So she reaches out to her brother-in-law, who gives her all the grace in the world and doesn't see her for who she is, to ask to come stay with them for a while. And his wife, Lady Susan's sister-in-law, Mrs. Vernon, can completely see Lady Susan for exactly what she is. She is going to abide by her husband's wishes. They're going to bring her into her home, but she's very anxious about it. And Mrs. Vernon is writing to her mother, Lady de Courcy, to kind of correspond with her about Lady Susan arriving at their home. She's not looking forward to it. She doesn't like her because Lady Susan tried to talk her brother-in-law, Mr. Vernon, out of marrying Mrs. Vernon. So naturally, she has a detesting for Lady Susan that you just get. But oh no, that's not all. Lady Susan also has a daughter who she's very much neglected throughout her life. This girl has no education. Lady Susan doesn't want anything to do with her. We'll come to find out she's actually a pretty good-natured young girl, and her lack of education is no one's fault other than Lady Susan. But Lady Susan is trying to manipulate her into marrying a man just to kind of get her off her shoulders. She's very jealous of her daughter. It's a really terrible situation for her. So naturally, Mrs. Vernon takes a liking to her niece and wants to protect her from her mother. But her mother's very conniving and may just get away with her plot. But even worse for poor Mrs. Vernon, her brother, Reginald de Courcy, Mr. de Courcy, comes to stay with them while Lady Susan is there. And Lady Susan sets her sights on him, and everyone is terrified that he is going to fall for her and marry her. She is older than him, and she's just terrible character. Even his parents get involved because his sister is writing to them. It's just crazy. It's crazy. And Lady Susan just appears so great on the outside, but on the inside, which you find through her writing letters to her friend, Mrs. Alicia Johnson, who is just like her, you find all of her real thoughts and motivations. She's just a terrible character, and you love to hate her. And I was just so invested in this story. It's only 41 letters, and I devoured them because I was so anxious for not only Lady Susan's daughter, I felt so bad for her, but also for Mr. de Courcy, because I did not want him to get trapped up in Lady Susan's and just ruin the whole family and ruin everything. So I was gripped to find out what would happen next, because just when you thought somebody figured her character out, she kind of weaseled her way back into the right place. It was crazy. I loved the conclusion, mainly because it felt very realistic. These people exist in real life, and unfortunately, they don't always get their comeuppance or get their due. And in a lot of ways, I felt like the ending was like that. I was satisfied with the ending, but there are some things I wish were different, and you only have to read Lady Susan to find that out for yourself. But I loved it. I wish this was a full, fleshed out novel, because I would have read it. It was great. I was totally on the side of Mrs. Vernon and, of course, Lady Susan's daughter, just really rooting for them, and I would have read and devoured an entire book about it. But I loved it, and I would read it again. And it's one of my favorite Jane Austen stories now. I'm not sure if I should rank it up against all of her main novels, but if I had to, I would say it probably really is right under Pride and Prejudice and Mansfield Park for me. I can't decide if it's better than Northanger Abbey for me or not, but it's definitely within my top 3 or 4. For me, it does beat out Persuasion, it beats out Sense and Sensibility, it beats out Emma, and I loved all 3 of those books. So that's not to say they were bad. I just loved Lady Susan's story that much. Not Lady Susan. She's a character I love to hate, but the story was just fantastic and a testament to Jane Austen's writing style. So that is all I have. I really hope if you haven't read Lady Susan that after watching this video, you will give it a try. If you've read some of Jane Austen's other works, her Juvenilia, The Watsons, or Sanditon, please let me know in the comments below what you thought about them, because I haven't made it to those yet. Although I do have them in this particular edition of Jane Austen's collected works. And I want to read more. I just want more Jane Austen. So y'all tell me in the comments below what you think I should read from her next. And Lord willing, I will see y'all next time. Happy reading, friends. I hope you had a wonderful Jane Austen July.